Last time I had lax. That sounds like something you have on a toilet.
Well, hello. It's episode 9 of the Wil and Dave show. Woohey! Happy belated holidays to all of you people that either celebrate Christmas or, if you're a Seinfeld fan, Festivus, because Festivus is a real festival as well. Will Vincent, along with Dave Judson, Andrew King, Al Nagy, all of that sort of shit, will be with you for the next 58 minutes talking about, well, Dave, what are we actually talking about?
I think we're going to talk about Kansas and the apron.
Is that it?
Sonic the Hedgehog?
Yeah, anything else?
Lucky number
Pokemon.
15.
Pokemon, we've got to catch them all. Wow!
Damn right.
Well, as soon as the music stops, I'll do all the important stuff that you guys need to know if you'd like to get in contact with us. But Andrew King, how are you?
I'm doing just fantabulously.
Al, you alright?
I am peachy.
Jonas, you good?
Really good. Thanks, Will.
Right, are you ready for this, Dave?
Ready as I'll ever be.
If you'd like to be in contact with the Wil and Dave Show, you can follow us on Twitter at Wil and Dave Show. You can use the hashtag Wil, letter N, Dave. On Facebook, it is facebook.com/Wil, letter N, Dave. On YouTube, search for GlacierTV, or alternatively go to youtube.com/GlacierTV archive. We're available on YouTube, on iTunes, every single Sunday, and on the ETV Radio Motorsports Network every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 PM Eastern Time. Boom!
Boom. Nailed it.
That was-
Challenge accepted.
That was almost perfect, except for the fact to confuse YouTube and iTunes. I can edit that bit out, though. But then I also have to
Nah.
edit this bit out as well.
Nah, you can leave it. It's cool.
Editing
That
is
was unbelievable.
really unbelievable. Really unbelievable.
In honor of Festivus, I got a lot of problems with you people, and now you're going to hear about it.
Where are we going to start? Where are we going to start? In fact, we'll start on a slightly positive note, because there are people, and they are starting to prepare for the 16th Street Racing League Indy 400. Now, and Dave, let's go back a couple of years. And of course, there's always been kind of 3 big Indy events for the last 3 years now. You always had what used to be the IMIndy.de Indy 500. Then you've got the one in May, and then you've got the ISOWC Indy 500, which was September, August time. It's moving to July of 2014. But you've always, this 16th Street Racing League Indy car race, really, it kind of sets the tone for the year coming up, and it kind of gives that momentum to some teams, some drivers moving up to May. The other teams, it's that harsh reality that they need to get their asses into gear.
Yeah, now that 16th Street is back and relevant again, you kind of have the triple crown of Indy 500s, and like you said, this one starting out in January really sets the tone for the year, kind of lets people know who to look for, besides Young O and Tim Doyle. There's always a guy that kind of pops out as somebody you don't expect or didn't expect to run that well. So there's always somebody who will show themselves in the virtual month of May, no matter what time of the calendar it is. And I'm pretty sure that Matt Cook made quite a statement in the ISOWC Indy 500 back in August, so I'm looking for him to be strong again in the 16th Street Indy race.
We'll recap the ISOWC one in a moment, but of course, you talk about people who stand out. The unfortunate thing, last year, I'm going to mention 2 words to you: Courtney Terrell. Silence.
Refresh my memory.
Courtney Terrell, it was that heartbreak. I can't exactly remember what happened, but it's that heartbreak towards the end of the race where Courtney Terrell was setting himself up to possibly win the race. It all went wrong for him, and that kind of had an impact on his entire rest of the 16th Street season. And it's really only been this year that he's been able to get back into good form. So whilst, a 16th Street victory can be awesome for you, what we have seen in that league, and we see it in all other leagues and in iRacing, a bad race, and it has the complete opposite effect. And then you're thinking of the, well, shoulda, woulda, couldas, all of this, that, and the other, writing 15-paragraph posts on the iRacing forums about, how if you didn't do this or that or the other, you would have won the race, so on and so forth. But you've always got that guy who stands out, but you've also got that guy who's the J.R. Hildebrand of the field.
Yeah, it's unfortunate if you end up being that guy, for lack of a better term. There's always somebody who, looks like they're poised to make a stand, and then they kind of have some bad luck or dumb luck or just not, taking your head out of your ass for a moment. And things go wrong in a hurry at Indy.
And, of course, in the ISOWC Indy 500 this year, we saw Young O make that one mistake that we never thought Young O could make, and he almost threw his race away. I tell you what, those last 10 laps are possibly the greatest 10 laps I've ever commentated in my life, ever.
As a participant in the race, that was just incredible how it all played out. And I thought for sure that Cook or Martin Miller was going to be able to finally dethrone Young O as an Indy 500 champion. And damn, if that guy's talent just doesn't show through exactly when he needs it. And he passed both those guys with, 2 laps to go to take the race victory yet again. Goes to show you how good Young O really is. I mean, that's just incredible. And where I was at in the race, I was just holding on for dear life, hoping they wouldn't all wreck in front of me, man.
Yeah, you're right down the middle of it.
That, as you're speaking about, coulda, woulda, shoulda moments when Young O ran into the back of Matt Cook and slowed up all the momentum in turn 4. Man, if I could have jumped to the outside instead of trying to drive to the inside, I could have had that Martin Miller move where he split he went from 6th to 1st on one straightaway. I mean, that was an incredible move, and 1 inch here or there by any of the other 5 cars could have just ended in disaster, but it played out just right for him, and he was able to, besides winning the race, that was the move of the race.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the greatest moves that we've actually seen in IndyCar racing on iRacing ever, because it was that sort of thing that if he had gone 0.1 of a second earlier or 0.1 of a second later, it wouldn't have happened. And it was just that perfect timing. And thinking about the race this year, the 16th Street race, it's all going to be about timing. I mean, we've got very cold track temperatures. We've got pretty much no wind. It's going to be the perfect conditions for drafting.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have that wind pushing you in a very tight turn 1 as it is. So every end of the track's going to be equal within reason. And with the low humidity and the, supposedly higher grip, depending on how the weather plays out to each other's setups, I mean, it could be one of the most competitive Indy 500s, of all the 3 that we've seen in a long time.
And of course, there's a number of things that play into that, of course. No wind, I say, turn 1 is going to be easier, which means that if you're the car drafting, you get better momentum into turn 2, which then gives you the momentum on the backstretch into turn 3. So then it all becomes about timing. When are you going to make that move? And I'm thinking back to the 2011 Indy 500 with, surprise, surprise, Tim Doyle and Young O, and it was all about timing there, and Young missed his timing just a tiny bit. Tim Doyle wins a race, but the timing factor of that is going to be crucial, but also restarts, because of a cold track temperature. We all know what happens if you have a late race restart, and I tell you what, if you're considering running that race, pay attention to my next sentence. If you get a caution with 10 laps to go and you need to top up with fuel, figure out what to do with your tyre pressures.
Yeah, this is the first time that I think that weather's going to play a hand in tire management or tire strategy, because the way the tire is right now in iRacing, it's, they're stones. I mean, you don't have to do anything with them. You can leave the whole same set on the whole time if you like. But 10 laps to go, you never know what might happen. I mean, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to give anything away if I think I know something or if I'm stupid enough to actually stumble into something. But
stumbling into something is more like it.
I think I'm stepping in something right now.
Well, talking about stumbling into something, by the way, Dan Blake's probably listening to this. Of course, he's one of the commentators on GlacierTV. He stumbled into a car after drinking too much Jack Daniels. Dan, I need to take you out so you can learn how to handle your drink.
Shout out to Mitch McCracken, who's actually listening to the show, probably because we mentioned Pokemon. But
you've got to catch them all.
His spelling's a bit off. He called us the Dylan Wave Show. But, close enough. He'll get there.
Yeah.
Hi, Mitch. Come back to IndyCar, please.
Yeah.
We need you.
Of course, before you get to race in the big race itself, you got to qualify. And one thing that I love about 16th Street qualifying, as well as, of course, ISOWC qualifying, but I'm a bit biased because I run that series. It's not like when you have the iRacing Indy 500, where you can qualify 45 minutes past the hour every single hour, and I counted up, you can do something like 90-something qualifying attempts, and eventually you luck out.
You could also leave the bar, go qualify, come back and drink again.
Well, yeah. Wait, you weren't at the bar, were you?
No, unfortunately, I was still in Cleveland, Ohio, because I had to work one more morning before I could drive out to Indy, so I missed that whole thing.
Well, for those of you who are wondering what the fuck we're talking about, of course, this year, it is still this year, this May, I went over to Indianapolis, to the Indy 500. Now, the Thursday before the Indy 500, all of the IndyCar regulars from iRacing go out to a bar in Indianapolis, and they get absolutely shit-faced. And, even better, it was something like $2 for a whiskey and Coke. And there was this really, really, really crazy woman. I mean, she was beyond crazy. It would be the sort of thing like, if you slept with her, you had to marry her, and then you'd be her bitch for the rest of your life. But then you had a couple of people who were trying to get themselves into the field, including our good friend, Mr. Bettenhausen. So, about 30 minutes past the hour, they'd get in their car, drive home, qualify, then get back in the car and get back to the bar, be there for half an hour, repeat the entire night. Dedication and madness.
That is dedication. That is dedication right there.
Yeah, dedication and madness, Dave.
Oh, that's a razor's
Fine
edge,
line.
isn't it? I'm gonna have to lean more towards madness.
Well,
I give it dedication.
we all know how it is, of course, because in 2012, you and I were in exactly the same boat, slightly different circumstances, because I couldn't qualify that last 6 hours because my internet connection went retarded. So I couldn't access iRacing at all, and I, in fact, ran out to buy myself a 4G dongle for the next day, just to make sure I could race. You, on the other hand, I think you could qualify, but you were one place below me. We were right on the bubble. And
yeah, I just kept qualifying and qualifying and qualifying. I just couldn't get the speed in it because this was the first Indy 500 I had ever attempted to qualify for, and my team, Mitch McCracken was on the pole with a similar setup that I was using. I was running a higher downforce setup, trying to just put in consistent laps to get in the field. And I was trying the lower downforce, and I was smacking the wall, getting a 0x, nullifying my 4-lap attempt. I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning before work and qualifying, and then going to work, and then coming home and qualifying again. I mean, and if it wasn't for Chris Manifold having a little too much fun in the Coke lot the night before at the Indy Motor Speedway, I would not have made the top split because I was 33rd.
And eventually, yeah, I got in. I was on my phone, I think, on TeamSpeak, trying to figure it all out. You eventually got in. But it kind of shows, actually, again, it's that pressure. That pressure does exist on the last 6 hours of qualifying. iRacing, if you're listening, yeah, give us 3 attempts. Every 2 hours, the last 6 hours of qualifying, let us qualify for the race. It will be fucking awesome. Or alternatively, let us do 3 attempts over the course of the week. That is it. You've done your attempts. You can do no more. Because then you've got to be strategic about how you do your attempts. So, of course, you don't go fastest. Well, you don't want to go fastest because everyone holds a little bit back on their first run or their second run. And then it's normally about 12 hours beforehand when Young O or Mitch McCracken or JP would always launch that bombshell on everyone. And then everyone's playing catch-up the last 12 hours. But tie it back into what we were talking about, Dave. 3 attempts on pole day, 3 attempts on bump day, and of course, let's not forget, bump day finishes 1 hour before the race.
Yeah, you got some guys that if they do make the race in that final attempt, you got 1 hour to get ready for the race. I mean, if that's not the most pressure somebody outside of the racing world feels, then I mean, I'm obviously not living well enough then, because that's the most pressure I've ever had to deal with in my sim racing career, is trying to set myself up to get into an Indy 500.
Which, you've done the ISOWC one as well. Which one was more pressured for you? Only having 3 attempts on pole day, or having as many attempts as you want, but then it all coming down to those last couple of hours?
Yeah, well, they each have their own unique pressures because with the Indy 500 for iRacing, it's the prestige of making that race, being the fastest, one of the fastest 33 of, potentially 50,000 members that could qualify for that race, being in the top 33. But then with the ISOWC Indy 500 is, well, you got 3 attempts and that's it. Yeah, you can be conservative and try to make your way in, but if you're not pushing to your limit, you can make mistakes because you're not completely focused. So you screw up that first attempt, it's like, oh crap, I only got 2 attempts left. And then if you don't get the speed out of it the second attempt, do you risk then throwing out your second qualifying attempt and trying to go again, or do you sit and hold? I remember a couple minutes before the final gun went off for bump day, I mean, there was 3 or 4 guys that had a chance still to qualify in, and they were on their third attempts, and it was just nerve-wracking just watching these other guys trying to make that race. And I mean, I felt nervous for them. I could only imagine what it's like being in the sim seat trying to qualify your way into that race, for the 33rd spot.
Couple of quick advertising spots. The Wil and Dave show will be doing a special 1-hour feature at the conclusion of Pole Day and Bump Day, leading up to the 2013 16 Street Racing League Indianapolis 400. You can catch the race live on iRacing Brazil, 7 PM Eastern, and that will be on January the 5th, 2014. Should we move on, Dave? And this is controversial time.
Ooh.
Stay off the fucking apron!
Let's throw some Molotov cocktails, huh?
Yeah, this apron debate, Kansas. IndyCar, iRacing, Kansas apron. You know what, it's fucking me off now.
It's my time to shine.
Yeah, well, it's... Of course, when we first started at Kansas, it was the debate over, shall you run the apron, shall you not run the apron? It's kind of now become a case of, what can you actually do? Yeah, it's a case of, well, we're going to go too wide on the apron. Is the inside car on the apron? Does he have to allow enough room with the car on the outside of the apron to coming into turn number 1? Do they have to then go up 2 lanes? Do you come down 1? It's like, it's fucking ridiculous.
Well, what the problem is people treat the apron differently depending on what position they are on the track. If you're the lead of the race, you're taking the apron, you're running the whole track like it's the whole track surface. If you're in second place, you're going to be that guy's like, well, he's on the apron now, even though he put himself on the apron. I'm going to pinch the crap out of him and not move up, and then he's going to have to then back off or crash the whole field. So, second place guy's like, oh, don't run the apron. I'm going to pinch you down there if you go down there. First place guy's saying, well, this is what, at least a tenth and a half faster to run down here. And if I don't run down here, everyone else behind me is going to run down there and then try to pass me. I mean, you kind of have to run the apron just because it's faster. If it wasn't faster, you wouldn't do it. Like in Kentucky, only fools run the apron because you hit like a freaking skateboard ramp and you jump around and it's not faster. Guys will race any part of the track if it makes them faster.
Should we try and tie this into this idea of what sim racing actually is? Because this is, of course, one of the big contentious issues. What is sim racing? And some people, it is just, a really realistic version of, say, Gran Turismo or Forza. For other people, yes, it's a training tool. For some people, it really is racing without having that ridiculous expensive racing. And people, of course, come into sim racing and perceive sim racing to be different ways. And then, of course, you've got some people that's like, well, you know what, if this is to be real life, you cannot go below the white line to advance your position, because that's what IndyCar says. iRacing, of course, have one sporting code, which goes for NASCAR, goes for IndyCar, goes for Formula 1 cars, goes for GT cars, goes for these stupid fucking figure 8 races at Irwindale. It's that one glove fits all approach. So your issue is really then, what is acceptable on iRacing that is supposed to be a racing simulator, and where does that difference between what the real world does and what the simulator world does, where does that line end?
Well, you know the problem with that, Will, if I can jump in real quick, Dave, the problem is we don't have live stewards. So we have to rely on the computer to dole out penalties, and you have to rely on others to make protests. So it's an imperfect system because of not having a live Marshall watching the race, and that's where a lot of this lies.
Also, too, Al, is it's a sim, sort of. There's no computer program that can perfectly simulate any event that happens in the real world. It's just not going to happen, never going to happen. You have to play with the rules you're given. And compared to the real world, that's going to anger some people, because in the real world, you don't race on the apron. In the real world, you run a real racing line. You don't hug the white line the whole time. You'll get overtaken. In the real world, you go down the apron, you're going to get penalized. But in iRacing, you can do all those things, and a lot of them actually gain you advantage. So there's some people out there that need to separate real life racing that they watch on TV and enjoy from what they actually do on the iRacing simulator, and they need to race the simulator, not as they're racing in the real world, because that's where we run into problems.
Of course, you've also got that final issue that in sim racing, you have a crash at 215 miles an hour. You're going to fly into a virtual catch fence, you hit the escape key, you move on. You don't end up breaking your back, or worse still, end up potentially dying. You just hit the reset button. And I think that really, that mindset of what you have when you're racing in the sim world is different. It naturally is different to racing, with a fire suit on and a helmet on, 6 inches above the ground with all the wind blowing in your face and the G-forces, because you're not experiencing that. And the fear that you get, and every driver faces an element of fear. Some people can suppress it more than others, but there's that element of fear. If I do this and we crash, it's going to fucking hurt.
Absolutely. Like AJ Foyt said, if a driver says he's not scared in a car, he's either not going fast enough or he's never put himself in a dangerous position before. And as on a simulator, you will never put yourself in a situation on the iRacing simulator where you will die. That will never happen, because at the end of the day, you're going to, like you said, you're going to crash your car, you're going to race really close, and you're either going to get really mad, go on the forum and tell the whole world about it, or you're going to hit the escape key and say, well, you know what, I had a good go of it, we'll try it again next time. Like you said, in the real world, you touch wheels and you race as close as you do on iRacing, I mean, the ultimate, ending can happen to you.
Well, fear is a hell of an equalizer.
It really is. And, I mean, I'm thinking about this, and you make a good point there. I'll do it again next time. And, of course, iRacing, in the last, 6 months, they increased the number of races that count for championship points up from 2 races to 4 races. The idea is that you then get more participation. But there is that mentality. Okay, I'll just do it again. Could there perhaps be a mechanism where, and I don't want to say if you wreck once it's game over, because of course people are collateral damage in wrecks, which is not their fault. But even considering the fact that safety rating is a no-fault system, is there a potential that if you're involved in, say, X amount of wrecks in a week, in a certain car, you've not got enough parts to repair that car, or you have to repair your car?
That's a great idea. How about an allotment of chassis or an allotment of engines, and go from there? And you sign up for a league, or you sign up for a division, whatever it may be, and you get X amount of chassis and X amount of engines for the 16, 18-week season, however long it's going to be. And once you go through that allotment, you're done.
Yeah.
Well, here's where you play devil's advocate. Say you get in a netcode incident where you're racing some guy from Australia. Unfortunately, him being so far away from the iRacing server, his ping is not as good. Guys are racing side by side, no problem. The internet screws up for just a moment. The guy on the outside's car gets punched into the fence, and he loses a chassis. I mean, yeah, I think that there could be better ways of instituting, guys just not going for broke every single chance they get and slamming wheels all the time. But, there's going to be a fine line. Somebody's going to get screwed, and then that's when all the complaint department posts are going to get posted, which everyone knows that I can't stand.
And, of course, we did have that argument. I think we had a similar argument once on the forums that, especially with the super team thing that IndyCar is right now, what happens if everyone decides to take one for the team to get rid of their competition? Which, of course, we are 90% of us mature adults. And I think that, the idea of racing always comes first. But there is that possibility. And, of course, there's always ways to exploit what is essentially still a sim. But at the same time, and I do bring this out once in a while, there is that part of the sporting code that people quite often forget, that Article 134, which I will read out in a moment, which I think that really does cover quite a lot of things, because at the end of the day, you are supposed to not bring iRacing into disrepute when you are racing. And in fact, paragraph 2.1.1, shall I put on a posh voice for this, Dave?
What's that?
Shall I put on a posh voice for this?
Absolutely, class it up.
Article 134. It is expected that each member will treat of the drivers, iRacing officials, employees, and the community with respect and class on and off the racetrack, and will not bring the sport or iRacing into disrepute via their actions, including, but not limited to, those at iRacing.com/first official deem prejudice to the integrity of fair competition in any series or special events within iRacing.com. I'm going to go back to this point. Prejudice the integrity of fair competition. Surely, apron driving has got to come under that point.
Yeah, but then that becomes subjective. Because, like Al said, there's no live steward. So, yeah, you send in a replay, oh, this guy was racing on the apron. Well, if he doesn't cause any crashes racing on the apron, then what's the problem with it?
Yeah, and I think that's what's happened before. I remember I was in a Star Mazda race at Charlotte, and it was the same thing. It's okay to go, in fact, I believe the response I had was, it's okay to go below the white line. If they come back up and cause a wreck, then it becomes unsportsmanlike conduct or aggressive driving, whatever it's called. But again, it's defined on that line. If someone goes below the apron, because they got loose and someone pins them down, is it still then dangerous driving when that guy tries to come back up on the racetrack to take a line when in fact he could very easily try to turn that car to the right and taken out the entire field? There's so many roadblocks on there, but at the same time, isn't it time, the way that iRacing is progressing now, that you start having supplementary parts of the rulebook like you have for the Pro Series and the WCS races in both NASCAR and on the F1 car, and there are rules which we don't actually see as members, which I've been told as well, which apply to things like qualifying in WCS and the road course at tracks like Road America and Interlagos. Isn't it about time that we had some form of supplementary rules for each individual series to kind of tie in? Okay, you've got the general principles, but then you've got the things that apply only to one or two series, which basically kind of tries to mimic what they would race as they are. Because, of course, NASCAR, go below the white line. It's fine. You watch a Phoenix race, for example. It's who can get closest to the inside retaining wall, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, I think there's got to be, some additional rules put in for clarity's sake, because you get so many arguments like the apron driving, but then at the same time you could say, well, why is the IndyCar ever racing at Kansas to begin with? Because it's not an IndyCar track.
Well, okay, it was an IndyCar track, and don't forget, are you ready? Have you got your glass in your hand here?
Sure.
Danica Patrick got a pole here, remember?
Ugh.
Drink. But at the same time, this was the old Kansas as well. The old Kansas, which had, 10 degrees of banking? It was a great track for IndyCar, back before they realised, oh, NASCAR, and put the banking up to, what is it now, 18 degrees or something? Which is, exactly the fucking same as Chicagoland.
Well, it's basically the sister track of Chicagoland, so big shocker there.
Yeah, and they're only, 2 states apart?
Yep.
Fucking bullshit. And think, this is actually one of the issues that I have with motor racing in the US, because we've seen it with Kansas before, we've seen it with Kentucky, we've seen it with Chicagoland, we see it all the way across the line. NASCAR used to be fucking awesome. We used to have some amazing tracks in NASCAR. For example, Gateway, which now we don't have, because the way it works these days is you buy an independent track, then you remove the NASCAR race that you had for that track and put it to a track that you want it to be on.
Yep, good old politics. Like North Wilkesboro is a classic example.
Yep.
Nazareth's another track.
Yep.
I mean, the list goes on. There's so many defunct great tracks out there that are just sitting there dying I mean, Nazareth's a great IndyCar track, and it's literally got the weeds growing up through it because NASCAR owns it, but they wanted the spot for another track, and so it just sits there and dies.
Well, maybe what they need to do is stop visiting some of these tracks twice a year and spread it out a little bit, visit them once, and use up some of these older tracks, the Rockinghams and the Nazareths and some of the other ones. I mean, NASCAR was big, 15 years ago. You'd go to Michigan and it would be sold out. It'd be packed with people. Watch a Michigan race on TV now. There's nobody in those stands. They're in the main grandstands where you'd expect everybody to be, but it's nothing like it was 15 years ago.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to be slightly contradictory when I say this. Why the fuck do we have 2 races at Pocono? Pocono is by far the most boring track on the NASCAR schedule. Anyone who disagrees with me needs to go and get their head examined. But you've got 2 races at Pocono, which I've never understood. You've got 2 races at Michigan, and you're right. They're taking it away from each other. Of course, the reason why we now only have 1 Auto Club race is because of the fact that the crowd was shit when you had 2 races.
Yeah, there's really no reason to be racing at most of these tracks twice a year. Daytona, Talladega, and the short tracks. I think that's where you do your 2.
Yeah.
And then start spreading the love around a little bit. I'm sure that, there's some great tracks out there that could, benefit the series racing there. Add more road courses in.
Well, of course, we'll come back to the road course argument in a sec. I mean, you're right. Talladega and Daytona, there's only 2 plate tracks that we run at, so therefore you've got 4 plate races. Now, Bristol, Martinsville, and Richmond, that gives you 6 true short track races. But then, if you have a look at all the fucking cookie cutters that we have, NASCAR fans General Motorsports fans get bored of seeing cars running on high-banked 1.5-mile ovals. Now, the old Kansas was fucking amazing if you were to have NASCARs on the 10 degrees of banking. It creates a lot of interesting stuff for the cars, for the teams, for the tyres, everything. And in fact, now the lowest banked 1.5-miler that we have is Kentucky. But, of course, they've got their issues with, people actually being able to get to the track.
Yeah, like, why does Charlotte have 3 races a year?
Well, technically 2.
That's the... Okay, well, the All-Star race, book counts.
Yeah, but then don't forget, you've got the 2 Budweiser Jewels, and you've got the shootout as well at Daytona, so...
Daytona's a special, track in my book because it's Daytona. It's where it all started. It's the track that made NASCAR famous. Let them run as many races as they want there. If NASCAR actually gets their head out of their asses and gives that car a decent aero package, then you're going to have great racing there all the time. Yeah, it's a little contrived and diluted because it's pack racing, but still, it gets people to watch it.
Can I interrupt you?
Nothing.
Can I give you a perfect suggestion for the All-Star race? Hey, how you doing? We've got a road course at Daytona. Challenge accepted.
Oh, that'd be great.
I mean, Marcus Ambrose will win every single year, but...
I mean, IROC ran there one year before the Pepsi 400 and ran the road course instead of the Cup track. And, I mean, those cars can move around that track pretty good, and I thought it was a good race. So let them have it. You're going to get the beating and banging short track, and you're going to get the high speed going through, the rest of the oval.
Dave, you were saying, the Daytonas, the Talladegas, and things like that, and aero packages. Aero package, nothing. Pull those plates off. Let the engine builders have at it, and then we'll go from there. And let's see where we're going to be running. Make these cars. These cars are fairly safe. They can run 210, 220. Let them run 220.
Right.
See what happens, and then slow them down by using a spoiler.
Why do we have restrictor plates at Daytona and Talladega?
They don't want the cars to get in the air and kill anybody.
That's the reason. They don't really care about the drivers. They know that the drivers are safe. They're worried about killing spectators.
Now, of course, we're going to have to remember the nationwide race this year when we talk about this, because, of course, that was very close to being horrifically bad. But when we put on the restrictor plates in NASCAR, it was at a time when you didn't have safer barriers. It's a time when you didn't have, the Hans device. It was a time when you had chassis that would disintegrate, fly into the air, and become aeroplanes if they were to crash at certain speeds. Now, we have safer barriers. Now, we have Hans devices. Now, we have things designed into the cars, which means that they don't flip up into the air as often as they used to. So is there actually still a point of having restrictor plates when you have Indy cars going faster and arguably can cause more damage if they were to crash at a high speed into a safer barrier? So I think that point is incredibly valid out, because I think we've outgrown restrictor plates, and the sport's outgrown restrictor plates. Yes, we're not going to get pack racing, but also we're not going to get two-car tangos. We're going to go back to proper old school Daytona racing and Talladega racing, where you had to wheel that thing.
Well, I think the only problem with the speed, Will, is that how often does an Indy car get turned around backwards at 200 plus? I mean, not very often.
Yeah.
The Cup car, as soon as it gets turned around backwards, anything over 200 miles an hour, that's where the back end comes off and they start flying. It doesn't matter how many roof flaps are on it or anything else. If those cars are going over 200 and it gets turned around, they're airborne.
Unless you get a fat Tony Stewart in it.
Even Tony Stewart at the nationwide race a couple years ago in Talladega still got flipped, turned upside down.
Yeah. And you can imagine the center of gravity in that car.
I mean, you got to give Tony Stewart credit. He was able to shake his ass around a little bit, get the car back on its wheels before it stopped moving. But
yeah.
But yeah, I love. You know what? They already make special engines for NASCAR anyway. Why not say, look, you guys got to run a V8, like a super small V8 that can only produce 200 miles an hour, no restrictor plate or whatever the situation is. Make them build special engines anyway. Make them build a specific type of engine for plate races that doesn't require a restrictor plate, and then let them go from there.
We've got that other thing that you're talking about as well, and this has been a huge bone of contention. A third road course race, and of course, the idea being that that road course would make up a race in the chase. Now, the purist fans are thinking, screw this is NASCAR, we turn left. But let's not forget, some of the best racing we have all year is at the Glen and at Sonoma. Now, arguably, yes, if you put a road course into the chase and you've got two wildcard races when you've got Talladega already, but at the same time, I think the road course quality of racing, not just in the Sprint Cup Series, but also in the Nationwide Series, is being good enough to justify a third race. And also, let's not forget, we have got Elkhart Lake. And if NASCAR decide to make friends with the Canadians once again, we potentially have things like Mosport or Montreal, or screw it, bring them over to the UK.
Oh, you want to bring NASCAR over to your side of the pond, huh?
Brands Hatch Indy. I think it'd be a great small fun track to race at. Silverstone would be crap, but I think let's not forget, back in the 90s you had the exhibition races at Japan. I think and let's not forget, NASCAR needs to raise its profile internationally as well as at home. Now, to talk about the NFL, how did the NFL guarantee a sold-out game and getting people from around the world to watch it? Oh yeah, they bring fucking games to Wembley. 21st century NASCAR, think about it.
I'm sure it's in the back of their minds, but you got the deep-rooted South who's like, don't you take my NASCAR away from me and put it over in England.
And of course, you've got some people that be like, well, before we go to having an international race, why can't we have two Darlington races again? And so on.
Those arguments about where to put races and how often will never, ever, ever end.
Shall we move on?
That seems like a good ending point.
Yeah. Couple of things been going on in the F1 world. Sebastian Vettel is a bit worried that 2014
he won't win everything.
Well, yeah, I think he's saying that he doesn't want the cars to be too spread out, which I think is. It's not him hinting like the Red Bull's going to be slow, because no one knows how fast anyone's going to be.
Hold on a minute. Sebastian Vettel is worried about the cars being too spread out.
Yeah.
So him and his 30-second leads, now he's concerned?
Yeah, I know. I mean, where are the ESPN debris cautions when we need them, right?
I'm sorry, Seb. I'm sorry, Seb. Racing should be about who's the fastest. And God bless him. He can win a race by 30 seconds. I mean, one of the best drivers that Formula One's ever seen. But to say that he's concerned about the cars being spread out, I mean, come on. Nobody believes that.
I'll tell you what, Will. Me and Dave talk about this all the time. The problem with F1 is they need to go back to fueling cars because they have to have something to keep these cars closer together. I love Formula One. I love watching the races, but they're fairly boring. I'll take an IndyCar road race over a Formula One road race any day, but just the reverse is true for qualifying. Indy qualifying on a road course is set up the same way, but it's boring. Formula One qualifying seems to be the race. That's the race right there. Where you finish is where you're going to be. You might minus 2 or 3 spots, but the pole setter always runs away with it. Let these cars go back to fueling.
Yeah.
Some of the best races were with fuel strategy, and now they're talking about they're so concerned about these one pit stop bore fests. Well, if you bring strategy back into the race right away with fuel before the green flag even drops, well, there you go. You're going to have guys who run low fuel the whole race, make 2 pit stops for tires. Maybe you got a guy who gambles on, running one stop real full tanks at the beginning and a short stint at the end. Who knows? I mean,
well, let's not forget the greatest drive I think that we've ever seen in the last 15 years. 1998 Hungaroring Michael Schumacher, when you had fueling and he did that crazy amazing 3-stop race, and I don't think that I've seen a better drive than that in a very, very long time. And you're right, I mean, not only did they have to start with their tanks brimmed to the top of the fuel, they all save fuel during the race because they never put enough fuel in, and oh yeah, they've got to start the race on part 1 tyres. The fuck is all that about? So basically, you can go really fast in qualifying, but there's a possibility that your tyres might go off early in the race. Hi, how you doing, Mercedes? But then also, you can go a little bit slower in qualifying, and then get some positions up when people are pitting. And it's just like, well, there's no consistency here. And you're right, they stopped refueling, I think, back in the early 1990s, and they re-allowed it, I think, in 1994, if I got my facts right there. And It was great racing again, and we had that period when it was amazing racing. I think you've got those 2 issues, refueling and also starting on a certain set of tyres. Now, I'll tell you what I want to do. Screw the run the hard compound and soft compound. Do what you had in the late 1990s. Either, and this is what the same Pirelli tyres that we have now, either run the soft compound or the hard compound. You make your choice before qualifying, and that is a tyre that you run all weekend long. Why do I say this? The Pirellis the way they are right now, you could probably make a hard-tired compound work for maybe doing 1 stop, maybe 2 stops. A soft compound tyre, you're looking more at 3 stops. It's going to be more fun that way.
Yeah, I agree. And as long as Bernie Ecclestone is at the driver's helm here, things aren't going to change. I go back to it. Me and Dave talk about Formula One all the time, and we always hit on the same things. As long as Ecclestone is running Formula One, you're not going to see much change. It's time to get somebody fresh in there and bump this up a little bit.
Of course, they're all talking about Ecclestone at the moment as well, because he's got that random court case going on in Germany, which I haven't really paid too much attention to, except for the fact that he doesn't know how to walk through revolving doors. But I mean, let's be honest. There's 2 things about this. Of course, if Bernie Ecclestone is found guilty in this court case, then there'll be a good chance that he might be forced out of the head of FOM. But also, Bernie is an old guy. I mean, looking long term, we do need to think about life after Bernie in Formula One. And we need to figure out who will take over from Bernie Ecclestone, what they'll do with the products, and also, because let's give some credit to Ecclestone where Ecclestone is due credit. Without Bernie Ecclestone, we wouldn't be talking about Formula One the way we're talking about it today. In the fact that it's a global sport, which is broadcast in every single country, which brings real money into, and it's got the glitz and the glamour of Formula One, which, let's be honest, back in the late 70s, early 80s, didn't have that glitz and glamour per se. It had sex glamour, and that's about it.
Well, I don't say Bernie's a bad thing for Formula One. What it is his ideas are getting to the point now where he's actually hindering the progress of Formula One. And as long as he's around, we're going to be stuck in this same rut. But yeah, like you said, he definitely made Formula One what it is today. You got to give the man props. It is time for him to retire. He's somewhere in his 80s, I do believe, like 83, 84 years old.
Even though he's banging a 20-year-old.
Oh, yeah, come on now. And his daughter's
money makes that happen.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely.
Sorry,
don't know.
just having a drink there.
Formula One's a great series. It really is, and I hope they continue to go forward with it because I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pinnacle of motorsport, and but Bernie's made it quite clear who he wants as his replacement. I believe he said that Christian Horner would make quite the replacement for him. So we all know where he stands with that. So obviously he's thinking about somebody taking over for him at some point, because as much as Bernie would like to think he's going to live forever, he's not.
You know, it's going to be weekend at Bernie's at the F1 track, and they're going to wheel him out on a dolly.
Wow. But, I mean, let's be honest. Bernie Ecclestone's talks about innovation. If I was Bernie Ecclestone, you know what I'd do? I'd run an oval. Do it.
Oh, God.
No, seriously, I would run an oval.
Car on an oval.
Well, we had it back in the 50s. We've had people bring F1 cars and kind of make them American for Indy before. Could you imagine if they were to run an oval in an F1 car today?
Bristol.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah, right.
No, those guys would die for the G-forces.
Yeah, they'd black out.
Yeah, they'd sell out. They'd sell out every single seat at Bristol. Probably there'd be people queuing up and paying thousands for it. But yeah, you'd have the Firehawk 600 all over again.
Well, what oval could they run at?
I don't know. It would have to be somewhere, and this is the thing. You'd need the sex for it being Formula One. They wouldn't run Indianapolis. They couldn't step on Indianapolis's toes. And this is Bernie. I mean, he's tried taking on Tony George before, and he didn't really win. But I don't know. It'd have to be somewhere. It couldn't be a Michigan or something like that, because I don't think the cars are too aerodynamically dependent. So it'd have to be like a, I don't know, 1 mile oval, a kind of
Phoenix.
Yeah,
A Phoenix, it'd probably run real well at Phoenix. Or even
That sounds like a hosted session sometime, Will.
I think we should try it out. But, I mean, of course, go back to what we were talking about a minute ago. The cars being too spread out. And this is one of those things. We are going to get a clear winner and a clear set of losers in 2014. Now, arguably, Red Bull are still going to be winners because you've got that guy called Adrian Newey. But it's been too long for Ferrari now. And I think they've really suffered with this engine reg package and this aero package. I think that Ferrari next year are going to... I mean, let's not forget, you got Kimi Räikkönen and Fernando Alonso, which is like the wet dream of teammates.
he knows what he's doing.
Yes.
Yeah. Outside the drivers, one of the advantages that Ferrari has is since the engine is a part of the chassis, all the other teams except Mercedes have to rely on someone else building their engine and hoping it works, mates perfectly with their chassis. Ferrari makes both. So they've been saying that Ferrari has a distinct advantage in that area. So it looks like from, I know it's early, they haven't even begun testing yet officially. Seems like Ferrari is kind of the team that everyone's kind of looking at as the benchmark.
Yeah, Ferrari, they're not losing because of lack of drivers. Their drivers are great. Fernando Alonso, God, that guy could qualify 13th and still finish on the podium.
Right. That's a good point. And Dave, I'm disagreeing with a point that you're saying about Sebastian Vettel being one of the best F1 drivers of all time. I disagree. Yes, he's a very good driver. However, he's kind of a bit like Mika Häkkinen in 1998, 1999. He's lucky he's in the right place at the right time. Yes, that can make you a champion. That doesn't make you one of the best of all time. In my opinion, Alonso and Räikkönen are the two best drivers in F1 right now, period. Because Sebastian Vettel can't race. He can hot lap. He can hot lap better than anyone else. Sebastian Vettel cannot race.
Well, then I'm going to say, what's your definition of racing? Because he's winning races, and he's winning a ton of races, and no one can stop him. So how can you say that he's not at least the best right now? Yeah, all right, pure driving talent, I'd say Alonso hands down.
Yep.
But nobody can beat until somebody can beat this guy. You got to say he's on top of his game, and that makes him number one. He hasn't. You don't luck into 4 championships. No way.
Christian Horner is the best F1 racer at the moment, then, by that logic.
No, he's never on the track. You can't say that.
Yeah, but he's the guy who's put the entire package together.
Somebody's got to drive that car, man. Somebody's got to put their feet on the pedals, sit their ass in the seat, strap in there, and risk their life every week.
Come on.
It's not Christian
Taki
Horner.
Inoue could win races in that Red Bull.
Hell no. Mark Webber couldn't win races in that Red Bull.
He could almost.
That's the argument. You know, people are like, well, it's the car. You know, it's the car. I got to disagree because Mark Webber's not a bad Formula One driver, and he's not winning. And Sebastian Vettel's running around, and then I guess, you can say, well, you know, the team kind of favors Sebastian and they give him more. Okay, well, we'll see what happens when Daniel Ricciardo steps in that car this year, and let's see what he can do.
It's not a fair fight. It's not a fair fight, though. And the reason why it's not a fair fight is because of the fact that you have, all the way back from, I mean, we're not even talking about now, we're talking back in what kind of July, August time, when they start thinking about the car for the next year. They always kind of put a tiny bit more emphasis into that number one driver. Now, it can be as simple as, you know, the car, the center of gravity on that car is going to be designed around one driver whose weight and height is more suitable for that car, and they design it around one driver. You cannot, and let's not forget, that's one of the big differences between Vettel and Webber. Webber's a lot taller than Sebastian Vettel. He weighs a bit more than Sebastian Vettel. You design a car for Sebastian Vettel, automatically Mark Webber's going to be at a huge disadvantage. And when we're talking about kilograms and fucking inches.
Yeah, no, I agree there. They are building that car around Sebastian. It just I can't go with the argument that it's just a car though, because Mark Webber should be winning just as much as Sebastian is.
But look at the year that Prost had that, you know, robot Formula One Williams. Who else won any races in that car? Riccardo Patrese wasn't winning races in that car. It was Prost.
Riccardo Patrese, hot looking wife. Just had to put that in there.
Well, now 20 years on.
30 almost, I
People
think.
get old. Come on. But Andrew King is making lots of noises. I don't know what noises he's actually making.
He's not playing any of the cool sounds.
No, he's not. What the fuck's going on, King?
Yeah, I'm just taking a look at that 16th Street video. You know, working on some stuff over here, making a new 16th Street logo for the guys.
Oh, nice.
New logo.
Yeah, well, it's the same logo, but it's actually like one that's worthy of being in a video.
Oh
man! Whoever ring the bell, Andrew. Whoever made that logo is gonna want to fight you.
No, there's nothing wrong with it with the logo itself. I'm still keeping it true to the original logo. I like it a lot, but the problem is I don't have one that's in the right format. No, the GlacierTV one was an overlay, so it's perfect. But this one, I couldn't find a good one.
This battle is set for one fall.
I want to be inside here.
Wow.
I want to be inside.
So, talking about 2014, of course, you've got all of these new regulations, and Luca de Montatelio, I can't say his name, made a very good point. Yeah, he made a very good point. He made a very good point about F1 simulators being a complete and utter joke. We're going full circle here. We're going back into simulator world. And the amount of money, let's not forget, you know, the F1 teams don't use iRacing. They don't use RFacts. They don't use Assetto Corsa. They build their own simulator. And I tell you what, if you were to drive the simulator that Red Bull have, then it will probably make you wet yourself. It's going to be that fun. But they spend millions of dollars every single year, and that money, that money's not only on the simulator itself, it's on the wind tunnel, directed the data from the wind tunnel to the simulator, so on and so forth, CAD scanning, what they do in the wind tunnel to put that into the simulator, then they've got to scan the track, so on and so forth. And I mean, 2 points here, all these tracks are probably laser scanned already. Why can't they sell them on to iRacing? And secondly, he makes a good point, really, that, you know, you're not spending money on the track, but you're spending that money in a virtual track. And for the fans, how many people go and see a NASCAR test? How many people go and see an IndyCar test? How many people go and see a Le Mans test? That would bring real value and money to Formula One if they were to actually fucking test on a racetrack, rather than spending all of their money on a computer game, essentially.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say. It would be nice to see them on real tracks doing real life testing instead of running a computer. And Ferrari was pretty good proof of when your simulator's not right, you're going to go the wrong direction.
Of course, Ferrari have got the most to gain by having testing again because they've got Mugello.
Yeah, they do have their own nice little track.
Is it Mugello? No, it's Fiorano, isn't it?
No, it's Mugello, isn't it?
Or they got both. They've got both, haven't they?
It's Ferrari. They probably got like 7 tracks.
Yeah. Well, of course, let's not forget. I think if you were to actually have real road testing again, that might be that little sweetener to get Audi back involved. They've got their own test track with themselves and VW. And, you know, you've got then the opportunities for racetracks around the world, which are no longer F1 tracks, and do the same rule that you have in NASCAR. You can't test at current active tracks for the majority of the time. You know, you can get people running at Brands Hatch. You can get people running at Imola again. You can get people running at Hockenheim when they're not running at Hockenheim, and Nürburgring they're not running at Nürburgring. And of course, Red Bull use the A1 ring when they're the Red Bull ring when they're not racing there, and so on and so forth. And not only does it actually mean that you get people on racetracks, you actually give a bit of money to the economy for certain countries, and it helps. And it's not just about, you know, helping that racetrack. You're helping the local community when people come and see those tests. You get the people who then go to that racetrack and spend money in the little cafes and restaurants and the supermarkets, who then, you know, help the local economy. I think we've just solved, Dave, the entire economic crisis around the world, and it's all Formula One's fault.
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, there we are. Barack Obama,
You're the man.
Barack Obama, if you're listening, go talk to Bernie Ecclestone and sort a deal out.
No, you can't. Never mind.
But
No, I told myself that when I did the show, I would not involve my personal politics in it, so therefore I'm not saying anything. Continue.
there we are.
Oh yeah.
Now, a couple of other things as well. Williams seems to be very happy with Mercedes, but let's be honest. If you're Williams after the last couple of years that you have, I think you'd be happy if someone went over to you and gave you a £10 note. Simple as that.
Yes.
Because, let's be honest, I mean, I feel really sad for Williams. They have had a horrible couple of years. They are the last of the privateers in, you know, real terms. And it really has shown the last couple of years in F1 that the privateers no longer really have any form of oomph.
Wait, hold on a minute. Terrible year. I mean, they only for a while there, they only scored 1 more point than freaking Caterham. I mean, that's shit.
Hey, maybe Williams needs to go into the energy drink business.
They really do. And of course, let's not forget that when they won a race last year, they then pretty much set fire to everything they ever owned. It's like, yay, we won shit, hide the evidence!
Burn it!
Hey, you can't inspect a car if the car's burnt down.
That was Senna's car that burned, though, not what's his face, Mr. Moneybags.
Yeah, but don't forget there'll be more soot on the car, which probably
Sergio
brought it
Perez.
above the weight limit.
He forgot to drive through all the marbles after the race.
That's what pisses me off, really, about F1. The cool down that. Just go in. I mean, what they might as well do is just go and find a fat chick, run over her, bring the car onto pit road. You'll be fine.
Hey, if Juan Montoya was still running IndyCar, somebody could throw him a fucking Big Mac, and he could shout out on that and make the weight limit.
Can you imagine that? That they could do that next year. You know, after race, bring it onto pit road as they're getting out of their car, stuff a bucket of KFC down their face. Job done. It will be a case of literally they had to eat the bones for a reason.
It's not proper KFC if there's no biscuits.
Well, yeah. Just to let you know, we are officially at 58 minutes. We're getting to overtime. But first, we have to close off the regular portion of the show. Do you want to do it, Dave?
Nah, I'll let you handle it.
Thank you very much for taking part in episode 9, hour 1 of the Wil and Dave Show. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter by following us at Wil and Dave Show. Facebook.com/Wil and Dave. This will be available on iTunes by 6 PM UK time on Sunday, and we're available on the ETV Radio Motorsports Network thing every Tuesday and Thursday, 9 PM Eastern on the ETV Motorsports Radio Network. Boom, I got it the second time. Dave, I tell you what, for doing no preparation, we actually did it right.
We're getting stronger every day, as Chicago would say.
Yep. Well, unless you're a Cleveland Browns fan, but they're not in Chicago.
Oh, come on now.
No, Chicago's a band. Come on, you should know this.
Yeah, true.
If you want to be an American, you got to know Chicago.
True story.
the Cleveland Browns have a movie coming out. I'm afraid to go see it because after 3 quarters, it might stop playing.
Oh!
Of all my podcasts, this one was the most recent.
Until
right now.
And we're back for Chris Overland time or something.
By the way, I played that for a reason. Christmas is over. We no longer get the K adverts and the Gerard adverts every 30 seconds.
You're getting Jello advertisements
Gerard.
all the time.
Jared.
Every kiss begins with something.
Every kiss begins with die! Die! Well, welcome to Overland. Overtime.
I just bought the ring because I want to be inside of her.
Well, we've got a couple of things that we still need to talk about, Dave. Before we went on air, we had a couple of interesting conversations, so we'll talk about them. We have to talk about Pokemon, otherwise Mitch McCracken is going to cry, because we have got to catch them all, Pokemon. And we'll talk about some other random shit as well. I'll tell you what, this intro music for Overtime is really too long.
It's not too long.
That's done now. Well, shall we...
Sonic 2 Chemical Plant Zone. We got to make that happen sometime.
God, yeah. Well, for those of you who know me, I am a little bit of a geek. Surprise that.
No way.
I know. And recently on the iOS device and also on Android, for those of you who are retards and prefer Androids, they released Sonic 2 and it's been remixed. Now there's this guy who in Sonic World is called God. He's called Christian Whitehead, and he started off by doing a kind of semi-unofficial official version of Sonic CD, which, do any of you actually know what Sonic CD was?
Yep.
And yeah, so there is about 90% of the world who have no idea what Sonic CD was, but we've got at least 2 people here who do know what it was. It essentially was a game which was made for the Sega, was it called the Sega CD?
Yes, Sega CD.
Yeah, the Sega CD, which was a humongous flop. But it created one of the most interesting Sonic games of all time. When you can go to the past, go to the future, it was epic. They brought that up. Then, eventually, the Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 ports were fucked up and they didn't work with iOS 6, so Mr. Whitehead got on his high horse and he started doing a port for Sonic 1. It was amazing. And then nothing came out of him for a year, and now the Sonic 2 port has come out, and it is fucking phenomenal. For a game which is 15 years old, Dave, it's in 60 FPS, and it actually looks really nice and fun to play again.
The best games are the old school games. You know, Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, as Jim Swinbanks says it's called in Oz. And then Nintendo 64 in my book are the 2 best.
Now, actually, the most difficult F1 game I ever played was F1 World Grand Prix, which was on the N64 and on the Dreamcast. I didn't like it on the Dreamcast, but I loved it on the N64. The only issue is that the steering is better when you use the little joystick thing, but you remember when you used to get an N64 controller, and over the period of about 6 months, that little joystick thing got so clogged up with dirt and shit that it stopped working.
Yep.
And
what
then,
I remember was one of the Mario games you were supposed to spin your hand on it, and kids were tearing up their palms with the joystick.
the N64. Emo
Yep.
before emo was cool.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, these are some great... I mean, this is the thing that annoys me about these days. Who cares about Kinect, and who cares about whatever the PS4 has? I mean, that's not fair. I remember games when you used to have, you know, a D-stick and an A and B button, or an A, B, and C button if you're very lucky and you're playing a Mega Drive.
I just keep thinking about how much fun those games are. I might have to break my Sega Genesis back out and hook it up to my HD TV. I'm sure it'll look like garbage, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, if you sit far enough away from it, you won't realise that it's got so much pixelation. It's unbelievable. But
Unbelievable.
really is unbelievable. Really unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, really unbelievable what you do.
But then...
It's unbelievable, really unbelievable what you do.
I've just done it.
Oh,
It's
there's an echo in here.
unbelievable, really unbelievable what you do.
Andreas, we heard you.
But I mean, yeah, we had the Sonic games. Of course, Sonic 3 is going to be a bit of an issue for porting because they did originally the music with Michael Jackson for that before the first Michael Jackson sex case. And then Sega was like, yeah, we kind of need to redo all of the music. But do you remember the level? I think it was on Sonic and Knuckles where on the Carnival Night Zone, you got to that barrel. And you spent a week figuring out, what the fuck do I do with this barrel? And then call up one of the premium rate hotlines. Like, yeah, just hit the up and down button.
Simplest solution is usually the best one.
Mm-hmm. But you were talking about, I walked back into the room and I was heard you talking about the Pacers and the Bulls. I was thinking, yeah, we're talking about NBA. You're talking about the good old Genesis NBA game.
Darn right. We have a NBA Jam tournament for Sega Genesis every year at my house in January. We usually get 16 to 20 people involved, and we have a, kind of like an NCAA tournament style, one loss and you're out system. We have a trophy made. It's called the Boom Shakalaka Trophy. And last year, the winner employed... The winner employed the hack a team strategy, where he just kept shoving and fouling and beating the absolute hell out of the Chicago Bulls, playing as the Indiana Pacers. And by the fourth quarter, it didn't matter if you put in Pippen or Horace Grant or anybody else; they were all drained. And then in the fourth quarter, the Pacers ran away with it with Rick Smits and defeated the mighty Bulls to win the championship trophy.
You're from Cleveland. Can I ask you a silly question? Were you rooting for the Pacers last year?
Absolutely. You always root against LeBron. I wouldn't say I hate LeBron, because I respect the guy's immense basketball talent. The way he left was absolute garbage. But you want to pull for the guy. You don't want to pull for the guy that just basically stabbed you in the heart and twisted the knife and pulled it out.
Now, of course, in England, we have basketball, but it really is just a load of people who had no other better thing to do in sports. So they decided, basketball, we'll play that. And it's kind of a bit of a shit sport over in the UK. But when I went to America, I never realised how big basketball was until I walked out of my hotel, turned right, ended up at the Seiko Fieldhouse. My God, you guys give a shit about basketball over there.
As a University
apparently
of
it's a big
Connecticut,
thing.
As a University of Connecticut student, I love basketball.
I mean, I went to the tailgate party. I couldn't get tickets for any of the Pacers games. In fact, the Bettenhausens got me a ticket, but by that point, my phone had run out of juice and I couldn't respond back to them. I would have loved to have gone to that game, but I was in the field house. Somehow I managed to sneak in, but not get past the barrier. And then I actually did kind of get past the barrier and actually got to watch part of the fourth quarter. Shh! Don't tell security. But I tell you what, this was, I think it was game 5 or something when the Pacers beat the Heat. The atmosphere was just phenomenal.
I mean, you go to a playoff basketball game, well, there's really nothing like it. And I was fortunate enough to go to some games when LeBron was in Cleveland, and just the atmosphere and the whole city pulling for one team, it's really a sight to behold. I would imagine, I know you're not a soccer fan, but 100,000 people cheering for people kicking a little weird shaped, ball around. It's got to be on the same level.
Well, I actually think it's, you talk about city pride, and of course, in the UK, we've got that weird thing where, for example, in Manchester, you've got two teams who hate each other. You've got the same thing kind of with Liverpool and Everton, even though they sing the same song. They really don't like each other that much. But you're right, and, I'm thinking 2016 here. How nice would it be to have an exhibition game between the Indianapolis Colts and Notre Dame? Probably the Saturday of the Indy 500, 100th anniversary of the Indy 500. I mean, Indy made Indianapolis, really. Let's celebrate it. Let's get the Pacers playing. They have a baseball team, I'm sure. Let's get them playing, and let's get Notre Dame playing the Colts.
You'll never get a college team to play an NFL team, because if that NFL team loses a college team, they're done.
Oh, come on, it's an exhibition game. They probably won't even play Andrew Luck. I'll tell you what, Trent Richardson will probably be the quarterback for that game.
Trent Richardson could fall down and get more yardage than he's been getting this year.
I tell you what, I'm a huge Colts fan, but for fuck's sake,
That's the big that trade was the biggest victory for the Cleveland Browns this season.
Yeah, I mean that Colts offense would actually be good if we actually saw that in the Kansas City game when they don't use Trent Richardson. Simple as that.
Well, I remember seeing all the tweets. Irsay was all fired up. Oh, big trade, big trade, big trade. And Cleveland's probably like, we're getting rid of this guy for a first rounder.
I know. And I tell you what, I joke on Twitter, and when Richardson got a touchdown, I went ballistic. I was like, what the fuck has just happened here? Like, the poor people that had him on their fantasy team probably just had an orgasm or something. It's like the first time he actually did something with his life. But, of course, we are now approaching playoff season. We'll come back to that in a moment, because we haven't yet finished talking about computer games, and someone did ask, original Xbox. Now, I actually really like the original Xbox, because it's that first time when you could really, you know, put some CDs in, burn it to your console, and then have custom soundtracks to your game. And, yes, Gran Turismo were amazing with their soundtracks, but Forza's was a little bit shit, and I always remember playing Feeder on Forza, just to give me that kind of satisfaction that I still had something worth listening to on a driving game.
Yeah, see, I never owned an Xbox, so I'm kind of out of the loop there. I went from Sega Genesis to PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, then I kind of gave up on consoles, moved to iRacing, built my own computer. So I'm missing out on the console thing, so I'm not the best guy to talk to about that.
See, I kind of went a similar way. Go on, Andy.
I was gonna say I had a bigger jump than you. I went Atari 2600 to Nintendo Wii.
Hey!
Hey, that Atari is classic though.
I used to play the original Grand Prix on there.
Oh, I tell you what, that original Grand Prix game, I used to play that all the time. And this is before I was allowed to have internet at home, so I used to play on LAN. And Andy, do you ever remember how hard that game was when you turned all of the difficulty settings up to max and ran full distance races? It was fucking impossible.
Now hold on. I think we might be talking about two different Grand Prix games, because there were no difficulty settings.
You're not talking.
There was only one difficulty level, and that was fucking hard.
So okay, you're not talking about Jeff Crammon's one.
Oh no! Here, I'll post out a link out in the channel on YouTube.
Did anyone
to show exactly what I'm talking about?
Did anyone play Jeff Crammon's game?
Well,
yeah.
I know all about Grand Prix.
Shut up, B.
I know everything.
But did anyone?
My opinion matters.
Did anyone play the original Grand Prix game? Microprose did.
I told you I did.
Oh hey,
I know everything.
I don't want to talk to you though, BT.
Everyone wants to talk to me.
No, we don't. Simple as that.
I have seven.
Yeah. Bye. Hi, Al. How you doing?
Yeah, there you go. All right, so I can't actually post a link, so I posted the search term for it.
That's all right. I'll find it. But see, I like the old games though, and I went from PC playing Jeff Crammon's Grand Prix game endlessly non-stop because my family would never allow me to buy a real console, to eventually it was when I used to go to these after-school club things because my adopted parents never used to actually pick me up from school in time. Yeah, I know. I used to have to stay at school until 6 o'clock in the evening, and I used to play. That's when I got into Sonic, and also Mario and the original. Does anyone remember the original Pilot Wings for the SNES?
Yes. Amazing.
That was epic, and of course you had the big fat black guy who was all macho, and then you got to level 5 and level 9, and then he started crying like a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
So you had them. And then I got into the N64. I never used to got my head around Mario that well. And of course you had Zelda around that point as well. Eventually I got a PS2, Gran Turismo 3, epic. In fact, that was the first time I ever did oval racing. And then I went to Xbox, I think. Now I have a 360, which I haven't turned on in a year. I've got a Wii, which I haven't turned on in a year because I just play on my PC the entire time.
Yep.
Plus, you have no friends to play the Wii with.
Yeah, you know, I'm a lonely fucker.
Aww.
But, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, computer gaming has gone so far in the last 15, 20 years. It's astounding. I mean, even if you consider sim racing, I mean, what you had the Simbin games, then you had R Factor, then you had iRacing, now you got AC. That transition over the last 5 years has just been off the charts. And of course, before that, you had Grand Prix Legends and the NASCAR 2K3, so on and so forth. We've come a long way in many ways.
Oh, there's been huge advances in gaming. It's really amazing. Like, you think about the big jumps we've had in 5-10 years. What's it going to be like 10 years out from now?
Oh, God. Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, for example, things like Oculus Rift, then motion cockpits, I mean, they'll probably become the norm in 5-10 years' time, rather than it being the absolute minority right now.
I don't know about the motion cockpits, but definitely the Oculus Rift is something to keep a pulse on.
Oh, you can motion my cockpit anytime you want.
Oh, hey, you're treading on some pretty thin ice there with the sexually explicit rules iTunes has there, Mr. Vincent.
We don't always put this on iTunes. We'll be fine.
We're talking about sim racing.
Yeah, of course. But
of course.
Yeah.
So if I say something like, I'll put motion in your cockpit, that would be perfectly fine.
Yeah, precisely.
True story.
Yeah, true story. And
true story.
let's. We were going to talk about.
Were you just
saying
sluts a bunch of times?
Yeah.
Let's.
Yeah. Well, we were going to talk about football a little bit, and because of the fact that Paul Jenkins isn't here, and it's Paul Jenkins' fault that he's not here, not our fault.
Here's your NFL update from Cleveland, Ohio. We suck. Back to you, Will.
Well, you know, I tell you, I found an interesting fact earlier today on Facebook that the last 2 times Jacksonville Jaguars have played the Indianapolis Colts away, so basically the Colts are at home, the Jaguars have actually won. And last year, it was one of the only 2 games that the Jaguars won, even though the Colts went to the playoffs. So, so the following comment is for entertainment purposes only, unless you're in the state of Nevada this weekend. If you're a betting man, bet on the Jaguars this weekend.
Well, would you like to know how pathetic the Cleveland Browns really are?
Go on.
The talk on the sports radio this week is, should the Browns purposely lose the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers to improve their draft position?
Well, can we just ask a silly question there? How can they purposely lose when they're going to lose anyway? Simple as that.
Well, I guess maybe if they try to purposely lose, they could end up actually mistakenly winning the game.
Well, yeah, knowing the Browns, that's probably what's going to happen.
Well,
yep. I'll tell you what,
the Browns are also so pathetic that people wanted to wear the kicker's jersey because he was the best player of the team for many years.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we have got some pretty interesting games for Week 17, though. I say that Jacksonville-Indianapolis game, that's actually got playoff implications. That's not right either, is it? Implications. Implications! They got it! Yes!
Stroke clip!
Well, a very, very heavy rotation tonight. We had a very Darrison, but let's go to Terrace Chase and look for the heavy pet.
A habitat.
There we are. But the Jags Colts game has got some pretty big playoff implications. That's the one. Because, of course, if Indianapolis win and the Patriots lose and the Bengals lose, then the Colts will be number 2 seed. If the Colts lose, they're guaranteed to be number 4 seed. So there's a bit of implications there. You've also got, of course, the Eagles-Dallas game. And for the first time in ages, Dallas won't be choking in the 4th quarter, Dave.
Yeah, it's because Tony Romo is going to be out of the game with a back injury.
I say what they need to do. They need to. Did they send Romo to the same place that Peyton Manning got his neck surgery on? Because they might accidentally be able to fuse some intelligence into him.
What I want to know is, who did they put in the Romo uniform in the 4th quarter against the Redskins to pull out that victory last week on 4th and 700?
I mean, this is the thing with Tony Romo, and I mean, let's be honest, he is a good quarterback. I mean, most franchises would give up a number of draft picks to have Tony Romo, but as I always say, you need to have a backup quarterback for the 4th quarter or the 2-minute warning in each half, because Romo's going to choke otherwise. Yeah. So, of course, you got that game. And, of course, the implications for that are just huge. And huge. And it's about time that Chip Kelly's offense starts working properly.
Been working pretty good lately.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget, at the start of the season, the Eagles were shit. But then they decided they're going to change their quarterback. And we've seen it in a couple of teams this season, that you change a quarterback and actually things aren't as bad as they were.
True story. In Cleveland, we had a winning record there for like 1 week when we put Brian Hoyer in.
Yeah. You have a look up and down the entire NFL.
Playoffs?
Playoffs?
Don't talk about playoffs. Trying to win a game.
I don't know what that means, to play us out. What does that mean?
By the way, every time we do the stroke clip, I have to yell "stroke clip" before it.
Stroke clip.
Stroke clip. Now, of course, as we do get closer to playoffs, I think there are a couple of things that is worth mentioning. And some of it is going to be set this weekend. There are a couple of teams, again, the Patriots especially, and also the Bengals, but also, and I'm going to be very fucking crazy when I say this, Denver, they've got a bit of an interesting way, because Oakland, on their day, can be incredibly good. And let's not forget, Oakland held the Colts until the fourth quarter in week 1. And I think Oakland can cause a bit more difficulties for Denver than people are thinking of.
Absolutely. And there's some motivation for Oakland to play the spoiler, because Denver does not have the #1 seed locked down. So, Denver can't rest their guys. They gotta go out there and try to win the game. They can't just, hope the second stringers can hold it down. And the Raiders at times do, look good. So it could be a very interesting game.
And, of course, as well, Peyton Manning has got himself, that record now with 1 game to go. So he's now got 51 touchdown passes for a season. That realistically is going to go up to, 54 by the end of this weekend. But one of the things that I think we have now finally settled is that Peyton Manning can play in the cold.
He can, at times.
True story, that. One of the things...
He better hope for a heat wave during the playoffs in Denver, though.
Oh, God.
That neck gets a little stiff.
I have Christian in front of me, and he's trying to warm his tires.
A couple of teams I'm a little bit concerned about, and I have to be very honest when I say this. Coming into the season, I thought the Seahawks were going to go to the Super Bowl. And right now, I'm not as sure about them going to the Super Bowl. I mean, they've been good this year, but I'm worried about the Seahawks.
I wouldn't be too worried about them. I mean, yeah, they lost to San Francisco, but it was at home for San Francisco. You got to go up to Seattle to their field with their record-breaking sound of the crowd.
Whoa! Have they got the record-breaking sound, or didn't the Chiefs get it this year?
No, Seahawks broke it.
They got it back after the Chiefs.
They got it. They got it back.
No, because I know the Seahawks got it, and then I thought the Chiefs got it afterwards. Was it the other way around?
Other way around. And the crowd was so loud that it registered a slight earthquake on the Richter scale.
Right, we have got to wrap things up in about 5 minutes' time, so I want your prediction, Dave. Who is going to be in the Super Bowl?
Ooh, Super Bowl. The #1 seeds haven't gone to the Super Bowl, both in conferences in many, many years. So let's go with Seahawks and... God, I don't know. The AFC is such a wide open. It could be anybody.
Tom Brady could very easily get it, but at the same time, you think about everything that's fucked up over the Patriots side right now.
Everybody knows you're full retard.
You know what? I'm going to contradict myself, which I do frequently. Let's go with the Broncos and the Seahawks.
Right. For me,
playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me?
I think
playoffs?
It's going to be the Panthers from the NFC, because I think that come the championship game, the Panthers are a better team right now than the Seahawks. In the AFC, I completely agree. I mean, the Colts could very easily go to the Super Bowl, but so can the Chiefs. So can the Bengals. Potentially so can the Dolphins. Let's not forget the Dolphins beat the Colts this year, and they've caused some very difficult games. They beat the Patriots, didn't they?
Yeah, but then the Dolphins also got shut out by the lowly Buffalo Bills.
Well, yeah. So you've got all of that. Of course, you still technically have the Ravens that could do the impossible. I mean, we could talk about the impossible. We could have the Ravens and the 49ers again, potentially.
That's absolutely true. The Ravens, perfect team to get on a roll and steam right through the playoffs.
I think it is going to be, and I'm probably putting my heart on my sleeve here, the Colts versus the Panthers.
All right. I mean,
if the Colts stick with a throwing game and not do a fucking rushing game.
Well, yeah, Trent Richardson's going to get him negative yardage just by going on the field.
Yeah. So I'm calling it Colts Panthers. You're calling it Broncos Seahawks. We'll come back in 4 weeks' time, shall we?
Sounds good to me, sir.
We done?
I think so. Cue the porn music.
Whoa! That was a little bit too early. Do you want to say that again, Dave?
What? Like right now?
Yeah.
Cue the porn music.
Would you say it was
Don't talk over me! Cue the porn music.
We need more lemon pledge.
Well, there we are. It's Wil and Dave show. Overland, overtime, all done in the books. It was epic. We talked. Oh shit! Stop! We didn't talk about Pokemon.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, we did. At the very intro, we said Pokemon.
Oh no, we need to talk about Pokemon for like a little bit more than that. Pokemon, Snorlax, Squirtle, Charmander, Bulbasaur, Pikachu.
Just don't swear. Mitch has to keep covering his kids' ears.
Has anyone played Pokemon X and Y?
No.
No. It's another argument for another time. It's like, what happens when you mix Pokemon with Zelda? There you are, you get Pokemon X and Y. Done. I'll Squirtle in your Blastoise if you're not careful.
Ooh.
Who's talking about the squiggles?
Better play Mario Kart.
Well, Paul Jenkins has joined us.
During the football segment.
Yeah, it's a little bit late.
Music, so I guess I'm done.
Well, Paul, do you want to wrap up?
Who, me or Paul?
Paul.
Wrap this shit up, Paul.
Of all the podcasts Dave has done, this is his latest.
No, you totally screwed that up. Yeah. Somebody who won a strength and field race in Kansas, you should know better.
Yeah, let's stop that. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations to Paul Jenkins.
Hey.
You speak it.
Paul Jenkins, I know that wasn't the way you wanted to win that race, but damn, you were there the whole time. You earned it. Congratulations.
Well, yeah, I thank you. I did kind of just was handed it, but I'll take it. What the hell? God. What the heck have I missed? Can we go on for another hour, please?
Well, yeah. Dave's got to go, so if you...
I got indie testing to do.
Okay.
Yeah, so do I,
Dave,
actually.
Dave, if you want to go, Paul and I can carry on, or we can just wrap it up.
Yeah, we just wrap it up. I'll be here next week.
Let's wrap it up. We'll bring Paul in next week and talk more football.
Okay, are you ready for... Well, don't forget, next week, we're going to get John Gokon, because we are going to have to talk about the championship game.
Go!
Absolutely.
That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over.
We'll do it live. Fuck it.
That's right. We do it live. They said that we've been derailed again, but we waited till the very last moment, so we're doing pretty good.
Well, that I showed up or derailed, so.
No, it had nothing to do with you being here, Paul. We love you.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna get real hot real fast, Dave.
Damn right I am. Alright. Will Vincent, or Paul Jenkins, or somebody wrap this thing up.
Okay. This is the Wil and Dave show, which I was no part of until the last 30 seconds, which completely went off the rails. See you next week. Bye.
Well, we still got another 20 seconds we need to cover.
Join us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, all that other good stuff.
Sure.
We had fun. Hope
Better
you did too.
play Mario Kart.
Absolutely, Mario Kart.
Yeah.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
You had an agreeable sense of the macabre to any delirium.
Of all my overlands, this one was the most recent.
Wow. By the way, Paul, I did when you came in on that final
you cut
intro.
it, right?
On that final intro, I did actually put your name back onto the broadcast, so it is now the Wil and Dave Show.
Oh, I saved it.
Yeah.
Got here just in time.
Well, we did actually consider, we didn't put you in originally. We were going to put you in, but we didn't know whether or not you're going to bother to turn up at all. So we didn't put you in, but as soon as you came, we put you in.
You ended the stream, right?
What?
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 You ended the stream, right?
What again? I dare you. I double dare you.
Nah, just keep rolling.
Say what one more goddamn time.
What?
What? Damn, Andrew's watching a movie apparently.
We need more lemon pledge.
Yeah, you're still playing it, aren't you?
Coming up next week, Andreas vs. Goke, Part 2, and that is how it's going to sound. You want a pipe bomb, motherfuckers? There was a pipe bomb, brought to you by the Wil and Dave Show. Fridays, 4 p.m. Eastern, live, exclusive on Glacier. TV.
TV.
TV. Hit on a TV.
Crow clip.